The last summer of the war came heavy with smoke, not sunlight. Hamburg, 1943. The city was a broken heart of brick and ash, where children played among ruins because there was nowhere else left to go. The sirens had become part of life, like church bells once were. Mothers cooked in silence, scraping rations from tin cans, while fathers returned from the front in wooden boxes, wrapped in flags that no longer promised anything. And then came the whispers, the ones about betrayal, about children accused of helping the enemy, of speaking to the wrong soldier, of saying the wrong thing. Boys who had once worn the Jungvolk uniforms too proudly now ran when they heard boots. A few didn't run fast enough. In one of those courtyards where laundry lines swayed between bombed-out walls, a group of small faces disappeared one by one. The city, desperate and afraid, turned on its own young. What happens to a nation when it begins to fear its children? My name is Marta Keller, and I was a schoolteacher in Eimsbüttel. I taught arithmetic and penmanship to the youngest, 7 to 12, the ones still small enough to cry for their mothers when the air raids began. I stayed when most others fled because I had nowhere else to go. My husband was gone to Stalingrad, my brother lost in the sea near Norway. The children in those days were all I had left. I write this now because I cannot bear the silence anymore. They said the war was for the future, but the future was taken from us long before the bombs stopped falling. It was taken when they lined up boys with school satchels and called them traitors. The morning it happened, the air felt strange, still and heavy, as if even the wind refused to move through our broken streets. A pale sun pushed weakly through the grey, and from my classroom window, I could see the skeletal remains of the church that once rang its bell each hour. The children filed in quietly that day. They had learned not to run, not to laugh too loud, not to draw attention. War had taught them early the art of shrinking. Inside, the classroom smelled of chalk dust and damp wool. The stove in the corner hadn't been lit for days. We had no coal left. The windows, cracked from the last air raid, rattled softly whenever a distant explosion trembled through the city. I began our lesson on fractions, writing with a piece of chalk so short I had to pinch it between my fingers. The children followed in silence, their pencils dull from overuse. Jakob sat in the back row, his hair pale as wheat, his face thin and hollow. He was one of my brightest, the kind who asked questions that caught me off guard. He had a gentleness to him that seemed out of place in those times. While other boys dreamed of uniforms and medals, Jakob drew birds, small ones mostly, sparrows, swallows, a heron once, wings open and reaching for something unseen. That morning, as I walked between the rows, I paused beside him. His pencil hovered above the page. He was sketching again, a sparrow with its beak open, as if singing. I wanted to scold him, to remind him of our arithmetic, but instead I simply whispered, "It's beautiful, Jakob." He smiled faintly, then turned back to his numbers. The door burst open before the clock struck 10. Two men stepped inside, local officers in grey uniforms, their boots loud against the wood. The children froze. One of them held a clipboard, the other rested a hand on his pistol. "Jakob Müller," the taller one said. His voice was flat, practiced. "You will come with us." I remember how Jakob looked at me then, not pleading, not afraid, just confused. "Did I do something wrong, Frau Keller?" he asked. The officer answered for me. "You are accused of aiding an enemy pilot. You will answer questions." I opened my mouth, but the words wouldn't come. I wanted to say he was only a boy, that he barely left his street, that no one that young could betray anyone. But my throat closed, my body turned to stone. In those days, a single wrong word could mean disappearance. Jakob stood up slowly, clutching his worn satchel. He glanced at his classmates, then at me. "Will I come back for lessons?" he asked softly. Neither man answered. They led him out into the corridor, his small shoes echoing against the walls. The door shut behind them. For a long time, the room remained silent. Even the youngest didn't cry. I looked at the empty seat, the open notebook with the unfinished bird, and the chalk fell from my hand. That night, I walked home through streets covered in ash. Everywhere the city groaned like a wounded thing. And I thought, what lesson can a teacher give when the world itself has forgotten mercy? The next morning, the city felt hollow, as if sound itself had gone into hiding. Smoke still hung low from the last bombing, clinging to the walls like a memory that refused to fade. The tram lines were twisted, the bakery closed, the windows of the police station boarded up from shattered glass. Yet word traveled, faster than sirens, faster than fear, that 3 boys were being held inside. Jakob was one of them. I had not slept. I sat through the night at my small kitchen table, staring at the candle burning down to nothing, Jakob's name echoing in my mind. A boy of 11 accused of treason. What could such a thing even mean? At dawn, I wrapped my scarf, pulled my coat close, and walked toward the square. The streets were almost empty. Only old men and women shuffled past, faces turned away from the sound of marching boots. Outside the station, 2 soldiers stood guard, rifles slung lazily across their shoulders. I tried to speak, to ask, to beg, but one look from them silenced me. "Go home, Frau," one muttered, his eyes flicking past me as though I were made of smoke. By noon, a small crowd had gathered in the courtyard behind the building, a cold, grey space once used for morning drills. I don't know how people found out, but in those days, rumor was our only form of truth. Women held each other's arms. Men kept their hats low. No one wanted to be seen there, but no one could leave. And then they brought the boys out. 3 of them, Jakob, Fritz, and little Emil from the tenement near the canal. They looked smaller than I remembered. Their clothes too big, sleeves falling past their wrists. Blindfolds made from white cloth covered their eyes. Their hair was uncombed, their faces pale. The officer read something from a paper. Words about treachery, enemy contact, endangering the fatherland. Each sentence fell heavy, rehearsed, devoid of meaning. I stood frozen, my breath caught in my chest. Someone behind me whispered, "They gave a British pilot water." Water. That was all. Jakob shifted slightly as the officer spoke, his hands bound in front of him. For a moment I thought he might cry, but then his chin lifted. I could see the outline of his face beneath the cloth, a quiet defiance, as if he were standing for something he couldn't yet name. A soldier fumbled with his rifle, his hands shaking. Another stepped forward, barked an order. The crowd turned their eyes away. I didn't. I couldn't. My legs trembled, but I kept looking, at the ivy creeping up the wall, at the cracks in the stone, at the pigeons perched above, waiting to take flight. The sound came sharp and final, then another and another. For a heartbeat, everything went still. Then the pigeons rose in a storm of wings, scattering into the smoke-choked sky. Jakob's mother was there. She made no sound when she fell. Her body folded as if the air itself had crushed her. I ran to her, but another woman held her tighter, rocking her back and forth, whispering, "Shh, shh." It was the sound of a lullaby in a world that no longer had children. The officers left quickly, boots splashing through puddles. Someone, maybe a worker from the docks, began to gather stones from the edge of the courtyard, placing them gently near the wall. One for each boy. I helped him. My hands shook so badly that I dropped one, and it cracked in 2. When I walked home that evening, the city seemed to listen to my steps. Every window, every broken door, every ruin felt like an eye turned inward, ashamed. The church bells rang at dusk, not for them, but for curfew. Yet to me it sounded like mourning. The sound echoed down the alleys, carried across the river, and for the first time in years I prayed. Not for peace, it was too late for that, but for remembrance, because I knew that by morning even their names might be forbidden. The school reopened a week later. Though no one truly believed lessons still mattered, the city was half rubble and the walls trembled each night when distant bombs fell over the shipyards. Yet the children came, thin, hollow-eyed, wrapped in coats too large for them, because the rhythm of school was the last thread tying them to what had once been ordinary life. I stood at the front of the classroom, the chalk shaking slightly in my hand. On the blackboard, I wrote the date, 15. März 1943. It looked strange, those numbers. Time no longer meant anything. There were 3 empty desks, Jakob's, Fritz's and Emil's. Their absence sat heavy in the air, like unspoken guilt. The other children stared at those seats, waiting, half expecting the boys to burst in late with excuses about oversleeping or errands. When none came, they looked down at their notebooks. I saw their small hands trembling as they wrote. Page 30, I said softly. Copy the problem on the board. The sound of pencils scratching paper was the only thing that moved. It should have comforted me, but it didn't. The rhythm was too fragile, too forced, like wind rustling through a house that no longer had doors. When class ended, most of them left quickly, but little Clara, a girl with dark braids and a stutter, lingered. She looked at Jakob's desk, then up at me. Her lips parted, but no words came. Finally, she whispered, Frau Keller, should we pray for them? Her question caught me off guard. We were not supposed to. To pray for traitors was to invite suspicion. Yet looking into her eyes, I couldn't lie. I nodded. Yes, I said quietly. Every night, even if you must do it in silence. She smiled faintly, as though a small light had been lit inside her, and left the room. I sat down at my desk and opened Jakob's notebook. It was still there, just as he had left it. The corners smudged with ash, the pages curling from damp. Between the numbers and sums, he had drawn birds again. On the last page, in his uneven, childlike script, he had written, "Birds are lucky. They can always find the sky." I read that line over and over until the letters blurred. Outside, the sound of marching boots passed by. I closed the notebook and slipped it into the drawer where I kept the attendance records, the official list of those still here and those gone. Jakob's name had been crossed out, replaced with a single word, verfallen, condemned. That night, I walked home through streets where every corner seemed to whisper. People no longer greeted one another. We had learned to speak with our eyes instead. At the bakery, the shelves were bare. At the canal, the water reflected fire from a warehouse still burning. I stopped by the wall where they had stood. It was quiet now, though the faint outline of bullets still marked the stone. Someone had left a small wreath made of dandelions and weeds. I didn't know who, perhaps a mother, perhaps one of their classmates. I knelt and placed my hand on the cold brick, and for the first time, I wept. In the days that followed, I noticed small changes in the children. They spoke less, smiled less, drew no more pictures. Even the laughter of the youngest sounded unsure, as if they were testing whether it was still allowed. I tried to bring them stories, songs, something to remind them of light, but every word felt like it belonged to another world. One morning, while erasing the board, I caught sight of a sparrow perched on the window ledge. Its feathers were dusty, its head tilted as if curious about the emptiness inside. I opened the window gently and it flew in, circling the room once before darting out again into the grey. For a moment, I felt as though Jakob's spirit had come to visit, not as a ghost, but as a whisper of the sky he had once imagined. And I wondered then, when all this ends, will the children who survive still know how to look up? Years later, when the guns had fallen silent and the flags of conquerors rose where the old ones had burned, I returned to that courtyard. Hamburg was barely a city anymore, just a ghost of itself stitched together from ruin. The river smelled of smoke and rust, and the air was thick with dust that no rain could wash away. Yet life, stubborn as grass, had begun to return. Children played again, their laughter brittle but real. Markets reopened. A tram clattered down the street like an old song remembered halfway. I went back alone. The school had been rebuilt, though the walls still bore faint scars from the firestorm. I had retired by then. My hands trembled too much to hold chalk steady, but I still carried Jakob's notebook in my satchel, the one with the birds, edges worn soft from years of opening and closing. The courtyard was smaller than I remembered. Ivy had claimed the stone wall, curling over the places where cracks once bled dust. Grass grew unevenly through the cobblestones. The place felt almost peaceful, as if the years had tried their best to forget what had been done there. But I hadn't come to forget. In my pocket I carried 3 small white stones. I had found them near the riverbank, smoothed by time and water. I placed them gently at the base of the wall. One for Jakob, one for Fritz, one for Emil. My hands shook, not from age but from memory. For a moment I could almost see them again. 3 boys standing straight, their collars crooked, their eyes bright even behind the blindfolds. A breeze moved through the courtyard, stirring the ivy. It sounded like a sigh. A neighbor passed by on the far side of the gate. She was younger than me, perhaps born after the war. She slowed when she saw me kneeling, her eyes curious but cautious. Our gazes met. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then she nodded, a small, almost imperceptible gesture, and walked on. I was grateful. There are moments that need no words. Afterward, I sat on a low stone bench and opened Jakob's notebook. The paper had yellowed, but his drawings still lived there. Birds in flight, wings spread across the margins, unafraid. I traced one with my finger, the graphite faint but certain. I wondered what kind of man he might have become had he lived. Would he have rebuilt houses, like so many others did? Would he have written poems, married, had children of his own? The thought of it ached in me, like a wound that never closed. In the years that followed the war, people began to speak more openly about hunger, loss, shame, but few spoke of the children who had been punished by their own. It was as though those small souls had been erased from memory, their stories too unbearable, too inconvenient to remember. Even in the new schools, no one mentioned them. History books preferred to speak of victory, defeat, surrender, not of a boy who offered water to a dying man. So I began to write. Not to accuse, not to seek forgiveness, but to remember, to give them back their names, their laughter, their drawings, their sky. Each word felt like lighting a candle in a room long dark. Now, as I grow older and my hands fail me, I keep their memory alive in another way. Each spring I bring flowers to the courtyard, wild flowers, the kind that bloom even in poor soil. They grow between the stones now, untended but alive. Sometimes when I visit, I hear birds singing from the rooftops, and I like to think they are Jakob's, the same birds he once imagined, free and endless in the sky he never reached. The city has changed, the faces are new, but when I walk through the schoolyard and see children running, shouting, chasing one another in the sunlight, I feel a strange peace. Life continues, laughter returns, but beneath the sound of it, I still hear their silence, soft, enduring, and sacred. When I hear children laugh now, it feels like a prayer. In their voices, I imagine Jakob's birds, finding sky, finding freedom, far above the reach of any soldier's hand. Dear reader, if these words reach you, remember them not as martyrs or traitors, but as children who dared to offer water in a time of thirst. And if this story has moved you, stay with us. Like and subscribe so the next forgotten voice can be heard before it fades away.